Kansas City outlasting the Denver Broncos 34-28, but it was anything but straightforward. KC out to an early 27-0 lead, and then the Broncos came storming back with a gear that we have not seen from this Russell Wilson-led offense before. Russ, 23 of 36 for 247, 3 touchdowns, but Wilson forced out of the game with what looked like a pretty severe concussion, was sent into the protocol, did not return to the game, and in the end, it's Kansas City with their 14th consecutive win over the Broncos. Patrick Mahomes remaining perfect in his career against this Denver team as he goes 28 of 42 for 352, 3 touchdowns, and matches it with 3 interceptions. All right, let's get into it with CBS Sports NFL and draft analyst Ryan Wilson, our guy Bryant McFadden, the 2-time champ, in as well. Guys, really an up and down show here, a bit of a roller coaster when it comes to KC and Denver. The Chiefs appear to put it on cruise control pretty early in this game, up 27-0. Ryan, I'll go your way first here. As you assess Kansas City, their current form, they obviously have enough to make a whole lot of noise, especially where they're seated right now. And when you take a look at some of what's out in front of them, easiest strength of schedule, but in the here and now, not the most impressive performance out of KC.
Not in the end, but as you noted, they were up 27-0 in the first half, and it did feel like, in fact, cruise control because Russ Wilson and that Broncos offense has struggled throughout the year. And then you got the sense that Patrick Mahomes got a little greedy, and he got a little greedy on several occasions to the tune of 3 interceptions. It's the first time he's had 3 interceptions in a game since 2020. That said, he came back and threw that third 11 pass to Marquez Valdes-Scantling just over 3 minutes ago to keep that drive going and allow them to run out the clock. So he is going to take chances occasionally. Once in a blue moon, it will burn you. Typically, it doesn't. And he'll find a way to usually fight and claw back in a way to find victory. So it wasn't clean. It wasn't pretty. It would have been something if they dropped 2 games in a row after losing last week to Cincinnati, which is certainly understandable. Losing to the Broncos would be unacceptable. But they got there, and they found it not easy going down the stretch. Strong start, slow finish, but a win's a win.
Yeah, a win is a win, and they come away with one here. They execute in the biggest moments of the game. B-Mac, I'm interested here because this Denver defense has been playing at a very high level all season long. Finally, the offense meets them about 15, 20 minutes into this ballgame. Where'd you see the biggest adjustment out of Denver that did make this a game?
Well, I think defensively, you're talking about putting pressure on Pat Mahomes and making him move around. Now, granted, he's at his best, it seems to be, when he's scrambling, moving around in the pocket. But what they did was they continue to stay disciplined in coverage and just continue to harass him. As Ryan mentioned, we just saw some miscues. Pat Mahomes got a little greedy at times, and he was trying to force the issue. I think when he hit that no-look flutter to McKinnon that went to the house, I think that kind of boosted his confidence, and he felt like, I can do this for the entire ball game. No, sir, you cannot, because you're playing against professional athletes also. And don't forget, even though they have a bad record, this Denver Broncos defense has really been good throughout the year. So they were able to make plays and force Pat Mahomes in difficult situations instead of Pat Mahomes just understanding and knowing it's okay to punt the football. He was trying to force the football in tight spaces, and the Broncos were able to make him pay.
And then the Broncos offense capitalizes on some of those issues that Mahomes had. Let's play a little game of revisionist history here, because unfortunate when any player leaves with injury, but Russ finally appeared to be finding some momentum here with this offense before he's knocked out with the concussion down around the goal line. B-Mac, if Russ is in this game, do you think the outcome's any different? How does the game change in the grand scheme of things if Russ is able to play the remainder of this ball game?
Well, if he was healthy, I still believe the Kansas City Chiefs would have won this ball game. Remember the drive that he had to exit, they still scored a touchdown. They scored a big-time touchdown. But outside of the production that we saw from Russell Wilson, one of the things that hampered their consistency on the offensive side were penalties. How many times did we see them move backwards, just losing yards, pre-snap penalties and holding calls and things like that really hurt their consistency in which they needed to showcase to be able to make this thing extremely dicey. But I can tell you this much, even though this was a loss, this is probably the best we've seen from Russell Wilson throughout the entire season, playing against a playoff caliber team, a defense that has been playing pretty good football. We saw some explosive plays, not to mention he didn't have a full healthy cast of wide receivers, but yet and still, he still gave you 3 big-time touchdowns, 247 yards, and also he was able to improvise and make things happen with his legs. We haven't really seen Russell scrambling in a Broncos uniform based on what we've seen throughout his professional career when he was in Seattle. Seeing him run the football, that was huge as well because he was able to give them another added dimension to worry about Kansas City defensively, that was in regards to his athleticism and making things happen with his legs.
No, that's exactly it, B-Mac. There are no moral victories in the NFL, but this felt like one that you could put up as something to build on if you're the Denver Broncos, a team that's been so hard to watch offensively this entire year. This was Russ's best game, and you hate to see him go out the way he did with the concussion because he hasn't done that a lot, as you noted, B-Mac. He sort of put this team on his back. If he can't do it with his arm, which he's been doing a lot this year and taking a ton of hits behind the line of scrimmage, he decided to use his legs, which was part of the reason he was so successful early in his career. And as you noted, Brett Rippon came in a few plays later and threw that touchdown pass to Jerry Jeudy, who had a hat trick of touchdown passes today. It's finally good to see him break out as well. I don't know if Russ had stayed in this game if the outcome would have been any differently, but I tell you this, if he had found a way on that last drive to make something happen and they win 35-34, the season suddenly turned around. They're not going to the playoffs, but we can finally have a conversation about this is the Russ that the Broncos were expecting to see. Nathaniel Hackett can take a deep sigh of relief for at least a week because the offense finally got it together after getting down so large a number. But it is the same Broncos team that we've seen all year. It's something you can build on. It's still a loss, unfortunately, and they have to figure out a way to close out this season. Assuming Russ is healthy next week, maybe they can build on this and find a way to win a few football games down the stretch.
Yeah, instead it takes a left turn. I want to take a left turn here back to Kansas City because, while it does seem funny to maybe question a team following a 34-point performance and a win, I do kind of want to gauge you guys where you're at on KC right now because looking at the grand scheme of things, lost to the Bengals, lost to the Bills, the two teams that likely provide the biggest hurdles for Kansas City this season. And I mentioned the strength of schedule, not all that difficult. This is sometimes a team that requires something to get them going down the stretch. B-Mac, what do you want to see out of Kansas City to maybe do away with some of that doubt that we've been offered here over the last month?
Just 4 quarters of play, smart, clean football. This is a talented team. Let's keep it real, right? One of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League. I think he is the best currently. He had a horrible game in regards to being sloppy, not playing clean football, and his offense still scored 27 points. Think about that, guys. 3 miscues, interceptions. They still scored 27 points. So I would love to see Kansas City put together a string of 4-quarter play of good, clean, efficient football. Defensively, I think that was the most disappointing thing in this ball game, even though they won. Yes, we can talk about the 3 interceptions from Pat Mahomes, but defensively, they provided life for an offense that has been pretty much dead the entire year. I really thought they would dominate. They did dominate, to say the least, and the turnovers kind of jump-started Russell Wilson, the Broncos offense. But defensively, I really thought we would see a better performance. Even though we saw interceptions, that defense should be good enough to step on the football field and defend every blade of grass, especially when you're playing against an offense that has been not stagnant, just been flatline dead the entire year.
That's right, B-Mac. You got to put your foot on their neck when they're down, especially a punchless offense like the Broncos have been all season. And the Chiefs have struggled to do that defensively throughout the year. You'll see you'll see Patrick Mahomes' mistakes every now and again. Those aren't things you get concerned about. Last week, Travis Kelce fumbled. That rarely happens, but that played a part in them losing that game to a really good Cincinnati team. But when you look around the AFC and you talk about teams like the Bills, who have been sort of hit or miss offensively in recent weeks, they seem to be finding their stride. Their defense is always showing up week in and week out. You talk about the Bengals, perhaps a dark horse team in the AFC. That defense shows up week in and week out. If the Chiefs want to be in that conversation for the AFC Championship game, that's going to be the thing that has to change. The defense has to play more consistently. You got a lot of young dudes out there who can get after it at all 3 levels. They just have to play like it on each and every snap. And B-Mac, you know this better than anyone. When you have young players on a defense, sometimes they don't know all their responsibilities. They get caught up in the moment, and you can blow a coverage or you can hit the wrong gap, and the next thing you know, it's a 50-yard gain the other way. And those are the little tiny things they have to clean up if they want to make another another Super Bowl run.
Yeah, that's right. Here in Week 14, they skate by 34-28, another double-digit win season for the Patrick Mahomes-led Kansas City Chiefs. Plenty more to come where that came from and where these two came from. Thank you, gentlemen. Here's a look at those fantasy numbers coming out of this divisional matchup. Patrick Mahomes, despite 3 interceptions, still gets you north of 20 points, 26 to be exact in PPR scoring. PPR doesn't necessarily matter for the quarterback. Russell Wilson gave you 30 before leaving this game with the concussion. Big day for the Jet, Jerick McKinnon. One of his best days on a football field in a very long time. Goes for 2 touchdowns for the first time since 2017. 32 fantasy points. Jerry Jeudy running it up as well.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.